Hey guys, it's Jen, and I am here with my May wrap up for you today. So I've already filmed this once, had no sound on it, have to refilm it. I'm probably going to do this as quickly as possible because I spent like 40 minutes on it last time and it's obviously too long. So I'm just going to briefly talk about the books that I read in the month of May. I read 12 books in the month of May, which is awesome for me. Really happy with myself. It's a lot more, like, I've been doing really well at reading this year, so I mean, I'm happy. Um, so the first book that I read was an audiobook that I listened to because it was one of the Canada Reads books for this year, and that was The Boat People by Sharon Bala. This book follows some Sri Lankan refugees who uh, came to Canada illegally on a boat, and basically it's showing like what the result of that is and like the aftermath. And it just, there's racism and hatred and acceptance and people who love them, and like someone who has like the same uh, whose parents are from the same place but like legally came to the country, and it's just like showing the differences. And it's, I feel like it's a very relevant book for like today because of like the whole Syrian refugees thing. And it killed me to like read about what these people went through. Like, you can't even imagine what people are going through, that they feel like they need to get on like this extremely unsafe boat to escape. So I mean, it was a good book. It was a little slow, and I didn't like the ending. Unfortunately, it was an open ending, and I'm not really a fan of that. So I gave it a 3 out of 5. I still really enjoyed it, but I didn't like the ending. So it gets a 3 from me. But I can see why it was picked as one of the finalists for Canada Reads this year. The next book that I read was another finalist for Canada Reads, and it was also an audiobook I got from my library on Overdrive, and that was American War by Omar El Akkad. And Akkad, I think. I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 as well. This one is a dystopian that has to do with like there being a second civil war in America, and like just showing like the country divided, and just, it's, there's still like warring and between the two sides. It was something. And again, I didn't like the end of it, but I enjoyed it, and I could see how like it could be a plausible future at some point if people can't learn to change with like what we need to change. Because this one, like their civil war, the second civil war, was caused over like fighting over fossil fuels, and one side didn't want to use them anymore and the other side did, and like the water was rising because of global warming. And it's just shows like consequences for actions, and like how divided people can be over things that can affect everyone. And it's just, it was a good book, and I didn't like the ending, so I gave it a 3. The next book that I read was A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. This is basically, like, as far as I'm concerned, it is a popcorn feature. It is just like fluff, just filler. It's just a short novella fit in between the last book we got and the next book we're getting, and like it doesn't seem to have anything to do with the storylines from either. But man, I am shipping Azrael and Elaine so hard. Like, I want them to be together, and I hope they're together because they seem like they just seem like they would go well together. um, and it just shows like there is a little bit of like showing how characters have become since the end of the war. Like with Nesta, she really not taking to it too well. She never did. But yeah, it's looking at like some of the changes that have come around. It's just little a filler book. Is not really like, it doesn't really have much to it. But I still gave it a 5 because I loved it. I love the smutty scenes between her eyes and Feyre. Just, you know, sometimes you gotta read something that's just trash, and this is just trash. So I enjoyed it for what it was. Next up, I read a book that's been on my shelf for quite a while, and it surprised me, and that is Rebel of the Sands by Alwyn Hamilton. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5. It is like a Western, like Wild West mix with like Middle Eastern culture, and it just worked really well. Like, it's worked so much better than I thought it was going to work. And it's fantasy, and there's magic, and you know, I really enjoyed it. And like, we have a strong female character, and I like it ended up being not at all what I was expecting, but that ended up being a good thing, and I'm glad I read it, and I can't wait to read the next book, because I'm definitely reading the next book, because I need to find out what happens next, because this was just so good. But yeah, I've had this on my shelf forever, and I hadn't read it, so I'm glad I finally did. And the next book I read was 5 out of 5. Amazing book. So much hype around this book this year, but it absolutely deserved it. And that is Children of Blood and Bone by Tommy Adeyemi. I love this. I haven't really read very many fantasy like that has like African culture as its roots, because I mean most fantasies seem to be like based in like a European setting. But I really enjoyed this. I love Zaylee. She's a very strong character. I love the family relationship and the family dynamics between Zaylee and Zane. And I love the magic system and the world building and the creature, like the animals in this world. And just, I loved it. And I love seeing, like, even Amari just growing, like her character changing from like a timid little girl to, you know, like, it was so good. And when I finished it, I was sad because I didn't have any more, and I can't wait for the next book to come out. And I love the cover, and I just love everything about this book. I love it, and I will be recommending this book to tons of people, and I've been recommending this book to tons of people, and I can't wait to read more, because I need more. I just love the magic system and just everything about this. So then, going from a amazing book to a just okay book, and I next read The Beast is an Animal by Peter Nelvin Arsdale. I was gifted this book over a year ago, and I had never heard of it before, and I didn't really know what to expect going in. So this is kind of like it's kind of like Grimm fairy tales ish. Like, it's a dark fairy tale. It's creepy, and like, it wasn't what I was expecting, but it was also really good, but it was very slow, so I didn't like that it was so slow. Like, it dragged in the middle, like, really badly. But it did end up being quite good, so I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5, because I really enjoyed it, but it dragged, so I had to lower a bit from a 4. But it was really interesting. It's the first thing I've read from this author, and I'm going to be checking out more of her things if this is how she's writing, because it's just like, it's not something you find a lot of out there right now that's recent. But I enjoyed it. It's something that, depending on what someone's tastes are, I'll be recommending it. Next up, I read a psychological thriller that I won earlier this year, and that is I Know My Name by C.J. Cook. This was extremely frightening, and like, I could see how it could be realistic, and like, it was, and it was just so good. Like, it's a psychological thriller. There's a mental illness, and just, oh, really enjoyed it. I saw the twist coming, but I still really enjoyed it. And like, I finished this, and I was just like, it was scary because I felt like it could be true, and it just messes with your mind so much, and it was so good. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 because it did drag a little bit in some parts. Like, the middle was a little slow, and I was just waiting for like things to happen, but like there was a lot of information dumping going on, and it just jumps through different points of view, which I'm fine with. Multiple points of view, I actually really enjoy it. But it's about a woman who wakes up on an island. She has no memory of who she is, doesn't even know her name at first. And yeah, it's just really entertaining, and it was really hard to put down, and it was a really quick read and really easy to read, and I'll definitely be recommending this to anyone who enjoys a good thriller. And Peanut is here. She decided to jump on my lap and dig her claws in because, you know, that's always fun. She is the neediest cat ever who loves attention. So she basically will jump in my face like 24/7. Anyways, the next book that I read was my book club book for the month of May, and that was Song of the Current by Sarah Tolser. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I had no idea what to expect from this book going into it because the synopsis just sounds so underwhelming, and it didn't sound like something I would be interested in at all. I ended up giving it a 4 because it was just really good, and it surprised me in such a good way, and I really enjoyed it. It's a fantasy. There's pirates, kind of, and like ships, and it takes place on a river on some wherries, which is like a ferry wharf thing. I don't even know what a wherry is. It's just like a houseboat, kind of. But there's ships, there's pirates, there's just a prince, there's a girl who doesn't take shit from people. And it was a good book. And I can't wait to read the next book because I'm definitely continuing on because it just surprised me so much. And the consensus was with our book group that everyone enjoyed it a lot more than they thought they were going to, because I don't know who wrote the synopsis for this book, but it does not reflect the book at all. It does not make it sound interesting, and, you know, yeah. The next book I read was a bit of a chunkster, and that was This Lovely Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. It is over 1,000 pages long. I was about 100 pages in when I started this because I had started reading it before. But yeah, I still read about 1,000 pages. I loved it. I gave it a 5. It is just as good as the first one. I love this fantasy world. I can't really go into much detail because it is the second, but I love the characters, and I've grown to love them even more. And the end of this, it just... I need to start Oathbringer as soon as possible because this just ended so well, and I enjoyed it so much, and I just love Brandon Sanderson, and I'm loving this series, and I really need to read the Mistborn series because I haven't read that yet. But yeah, this is a highly recommended series from me. It's fairly hyped, and it's worth the hype. I know they're long and intimidating, but they're so good. And next up, I read R.I.P. Eliza Hart by Alyssa Scheimel, which is a book that I got from BEA or BookCon last year. It has a bit of water damage. My kids dumped water on my desk while I was reading it. But this is about a girl named Eliza Hart who dies, and they are trying to figure out if someone killed her or if she committed suicide because she had like the perfect life and no reason to kill herself. And then it also, like, the main character who it follows has claustrophobia, and she doesn't know why. Like, nobody knows why she has claustrophobia, and she can't cure it, and she's trying to cure it. And, you know, it's a really interesting book about mental illness. And, like, while I enjoyed it, it was also very slow in some parts, and also unrealistic in some parts. So I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5. But I did enjoy it. It's just, I don't know. I'm probably not keeping this book, but passing it on. Hopefully someone will enjoy it more than I did. Like, a 3 is still, I liked it. It's just, you know, it was missing something that I felt it could have had. But this is also the arc, so, I mean, maybe it got fixed in the actual book. And the final book that I read in the month of May was Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. So more Brandon Sanderson, another big chunkster book. I listened to this one on audiobook while I was painting my son's bedrooms because I needed something to listen to, obviously. And I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5. It's not quite as enjoyable as the Stormlight Archives for me, but I did really enjoy it. I'm pretty sure this was supposed to be a standalone, but it's going to be expanded on. But like, it is classic fantasy, classic Brandon Sanderson. It was really good. There's political stuff going on. There's magic. It's just a fantasy world. It's multiple points of views, classic fantasy, and I just really enjoyed it. And I will be recommending it to people because it was just that good. So yeah, these are some of the books that I read in the month of May. Let me know down below if you've read any of them and what you thought, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!